Join your host, Maddie Roche, as she brings you into a community of fee-only financial advisors who are successfully building profitable businesses that serve the next generation of clients. Learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your best life and help your clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello, and welcome to XYPN Radio. It's Maddie Roche, your host. I'm excited to have Tommy Blackburn and John Mason on the show with me today. John and Tommy are not only best friends, but they're partners at Mason & Associates, a fee-only firm out of Newport News, Virginia. Tom and Johnny have a really interesting experience as they joined John's family firm that was started in the early 80s. They always had a goal to transition into the fee-only world out from under their broker-dealer, and it wasn't until last year that they were able to execute that. This interview is fun, and you're going to feel the energy that Tom and Johnny have around their work. They talk a lot about what they gave up and what they gained by moving away from the broker-dealer. And they share some really sage advice about how preparation can be your best friend in a transition like this. Tommy and John also talk about the radio show that they have together on their local radio station and how it's not only a great opportunity to just talk a bit about their work to the listeners of their community, but it's been a primary lead source for them. And it's allowed them to further their mission by expanding their reach and impact by educating their community members. If you're interested in what it's like to transition an existing firm into the fee-only space and to do it with your dear friend, then this show is for you. Avocado toast, selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. You can find any of the resources we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/296. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with John and Tommy. Hello, Tommy and John. Welcome to XYPN Radio. How are you both doing?
Oh, Maddie, it's great to be here with you. We just couldn't be happier to be on the XYPN Radio podcast and excited to be across the table from one of my best friends and business partners, Mr. Tommy Blackburn.
Thanks for having us, Maddie. We're doing great, and we're really excited to be a part of this.
Awesome. I've been really looking forward to this interview. There's always a special dynamic when we get two friends together, especially folks that work together. So let's dive in. John, I'll have you start us off. Go ahead and let us know a little bit about the firm, yourself, and Tommy, I'll ask you the same.
Yeah, Maddie, we're a fee-only financial planning firm located in Newport News, Virginia. So we're really uniquely positioned in the Hampton Roads or Tidewater area. So our niche market is federal employees. The neat part about our area is we're right next to Langley Air Force Base, Norfolk Naval Base, NASA Langley. So we have a really interesting dynamic. We have a lot of federal employee clients. And so that's our niche market. And as far as the firm goes, we registered with the SEC in the fall, September of 2020. But we've been doing financial planning in Hampton Roads, Virginia since 1987. So you'll learn a little bit more about our firm. Mike and Ken Mason, the founders of the firm, their transition from AXA Equitable as insurance salesmen through the transition to broker-dealer, building our RIA business, that fee-only business, and then ultimately that transition away to launching our firm, registering with the SEC fall of 2020.
Oh, so we have a real example today of a successful succession plan, a successful transition from broker-dealer into the fee-only space. We've got so much to dive into. Tommy, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Tommy Blackburn, CFP, CPA. John is a CFP as well. I joined the firm in 2019, but John and I We studied at Virginia Tech together in the CFP program there. We did our senior project together. We really hit it off, and we've been in touch ever since 2010. And John joked when I finally joined the firm in 2019 that he had been recruiting me for 10 years roughly. And it's been great since we've been here. So I haven't seen the entire history of the firm, but I feel like I've been a part of it since 2010, just vicariously through John. I was at an RIA in Richmond, Virginia, joined the firm, helped make that transition to the RIA, and now business partner, and everything is great. Couldn't be happier. Really excited to share our story with you.
Awesome.
And the neat part, Tommy, about our relationship is over the last 10 years, before we were even working together, we were impacting each other's businesses, even though we didn't work together. So we would do annual recruiting trips to Virginia Tech. And Tommy would have like a really cool idea. Hey, we just implemented Calendly. So I'd come back and I'd implement Calendly, or we would revamp our website. And then a few days later, their website was updated. So it's just really neat that we always had that synergy, and we were constantly working to improve each other even before we were business partners. And that synergy just continues. And Maddie, I think the relationship that Tommy and I had is exactly like the relationship that we have with other XYPN members, that idea of like cultivating this mutually beneficial group of advisors who are all working together towards a common interest, rather than some sort of like arbitrary competition amongst the members.
Totally. Oh, that synergy is so precious too, to continue to cultivate, and for it to turn out to be a working relationship is really impressive. I want to dive more into the dynamics of working with friends and all that. But John, go ahead and let us know. I'd love to know the number of clients you serve and what percentage of those are federal employees.
So we serve about 400 families right now. Wow. We have 4 senior or lead financial planners. So you've got Mike Mason and Ken Mason, the founders of the firm, and then Tommy Blackburn and myself. Mike, Ken, and I are serving about 100 to 125 families each. Tommy has been with us since 2019 and is up to 30 families now.
Wow.
As far as the proportion of federal to non-federal, we believe that about 50% of our clients are federal employees.
Awesome.
Now, probably a higher number of that have some connection to federal. So we've found over the years that you may have somebody that works at NASA who's married to a Virginia retirement system school teacher.
Got it.
Or works at Huntington Ingalls or Centera. So we have like these little pods all over Hampton Roads in these different private sector industries, but about 50% of the clients are federal, probably more like 70 or 80% have some sort of federal or military connection.
Fabulous. What a great niche. Tommy, what were you doing during the years that John was recruiting you?
So we both graduated from the Virginia Tech program in 2010. If you recall, that wasn't a great economy to graduate into, particularly in the financial planning space. So I decided I wanted to, I felt like tax was pervasive in all areas of financial planning. So I wanted to specialize a little further. So I decided it wasn't a bad time to continue my education and stayed an extra year to get my master's degree at Virginia Tech in tax, and so I could become a CPA.
Wow.
From there, was recruited by PwC, went into their private client services. So was trying to direct myself in the CPA world into that personal financial planning space. I was there for a year, and then a firm I had interned with out of Richmond reached out. The economy had recovered. Their business was, their financial planning business was picking up. So then I went back in directly into financial planning for an RIA in Richmond, a rather large RIA. At the time that I joined, they probably were around 400 million. I think today they're over 800 million. Was there for 7 years doing fee-only financial planning and tax prep, and all the while keeping in touch with John and learning from each other. And it's one of those things where all the time we kept in touch was like, wouldn't it be great if we could work together? And eventually John just says, hey, our practice has grown to a place, we know you're doing really well where you're at, but really we'd like to talk to you. And it just was amazing. I remember coming back from that first meeting when I got to meet Mike and Ken, and going down there, me thinking like, this probably is, nothing's going to come of this. Like, I think we'll be friends, but I don't know why I didn't think it would happen. And I came back from it I remember looking at my wife and like, that went extremely well. I think that this is really, you know, a good probability this is going to happen. And then it happened, and it's been amazing. Feel truly fortunate and blessed. The synergies get along great with Mike and Ken. What we've done with the firm, I think, is amazing. I guess it's all relative from each person's perspective, but we've done a lot while I've been here, and it's like a storybook.
Sounds so fun and really meaningful. John, tell us a little bit about your backstory, and was it always the plan to join the firm?
So backstory is I really had no idea, Maddie, when I went off to Virginia Tech, where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And I went in as a civil engineer and quickly found out that was absolutely not the path for me. I really, really struggled. And one of my best friends was like, why aren't you doing financial planning? I said, well, because my dad's doing financial planning and I don't want to do what my dad does. I said, maybe 10 years after graduation, I'll explore that path. And he basically called me out and said, that sounds like a really silly plan. So basically the next day I put in the transfer paperwork, left the business department left civil engineering and switched over to financial planning. Had to play a little bit of catch up, had to do some summer classes to try and graduate on time and get caught up. But I'll never forget, Maddie, the first day I sat down in a financial planning class and the teacher said, does anybody know what a Roth IRA is? And I was like, well, I do, and I was like, I'm home. I'm finally home. Like my dad used to read me bedtime stories about Roth IRAs and things of this nature.
Yes.
So I grew up attending leaders conferences. I grew up going to financial planning conferences because that was our vacation.
Totally.
There were some hard years in the business where we were building the firm. So that was our getaway. And I remember shaking hands and meeting other financial services professionals. So this was the environment. We joked that I was kind of born and bred for this in a way, but I didn't really know it until I knew it. And that was junior year of college. Graduated in May of 2010 on a Saturday. Started at Mason and Associates on Monday. Worked 8 to 8 on Monday. Passed the various examinations. CFP November of 2010. So we've been hitting the ground running since day one, and it's just been an awesome relationship. Couldn't be happier. You can't pick your parents, but I've got great parents. I've got a great uncle. And if I had to pick business partners, it would be Mike Ken, Bobby Mason, my mother, who's at the firm as well. I'm truly just blessed to love them as family members and love them as business partners.
Wonderful.
I had to, as you mentioned, the series licenses. That was one of the fun things about me going from an RIA to a independent BD firm, and then of course now back to RIA. So I got to, when I joined the firm, well into my career as a CFP and CPA, got to go take the Series 7 and I think another series exam, only to give them up again probably within a year. So that was a lot of a lot of fun, but a necessary part of this whole process.
Well, it showed Tommy so much confidence that you had in me and Mike and Ken to take that leap, because you weren't really excited about leaving fee only and going to that hybrid broker dealer model. And we all had visions, Maddie, that eventually we would end up in this space. We just didn't know how quickly. We didn't know how fast. We didn't know if it was something that Tommy and I would do after Mike and Ken retired, or would we do it with them? So it's a really just like good faith and trust in everything that we're doing, that yes, we can be a fiduciary inside of that hybrid broker dealer world, even if that's not where we want to be right this second. So you took that leap of faith, Tommy, and I'll never forget that.
Oh yeah. Well, it was a leap of faith on both sides. And it all worked out. It's just, it's funny how things work out. When I look back at it, it's just somewhat comical to, I already be a CFP and a CPA, have done thinking that I had knocked these regulatory exams out years ago and kind of going back to it with the knowledge that probably going to end up just giving this up in a couple years, maybe it'd be 10 years. You're right. It was a leap of faith. I had no idea happened much faster than either of us would have anticipated.
I'm so interested in that draw towards wanting to be in this space. You both are so lucky that you were through college introduced to financial planning, and John much earlier than that. But not everyone knows that financial planning is a career path, and especially they don't know that fee-only financial planning is a career path. So I'm really interested, where was that kind of intrinsic draw to be fee-only? Where did it come from?
I think, Maddie, that it really didn't used to be there, to be frank. It really didn't used to be there. Back in the day, if commissions were kind of the way that people operated, and it wasn't looked at as a negative or bad thing. Back in the day, there were some really pretty awesome variable annuities and other insurance products that offered great guarantees, that were marketable. Over time, these products have become watered down. They're not as strong as they used to be. And then the overarching theme of commission-based salespeople are bad starts to take a toll on you after a while. And then when potentially, Reg BI and these other things that are happening that say, well, if you're affiliated with a broker dealer, then maybe you can't use your CFP designation. And then we couple that with just the enormous amount of paperwork and compliance requirements when you live in that dual and hybrid space is just onerous. And it was causing us so much more work that it was actually taking us away from our mission of serving our clients. So now, because we're a fee-only firm and we've eliminated so much of that burden, we can focus on our mission and our vision, which is delivering exceptional service and world-class financial planning to federal employees in Hampton Roads and across the United States. Eliminating a lot of that stuff has really enabled us to get back to our core competencies and focus on what's important.
Wow. How did that conversation go with Mike and Ken? Were they as on board about the fee-only space as you two were?
Tommy will have an interesting perspective on this too. I would say that initially, no. Initially, because they grew up in the world that was not demonized. They grew up in a world where they weren't the bad guys, or looked at as the bad guys. And then over the course of time, that has changed. And we've probably been talking about going fee only or leaving the BD for 4 or 5 years before we actually did it.
Wow.
And I don't remember exactly, Tommy, maybe you do, but there was a tipping point, and I think it was something with Reg BI that Mike was just like, we have to leave tomorrow. Like we just can't function in this world anymore. So there was a tipping point, something happened legislatively or the potential to, and then they got on board really, really quickly and have never looked back.
I think in hindsight, they think it's unquestionably was the right thing, and the future looks even brighter than it did before we made the switch. I think they're 100% behind it at the time. Yeah, I think your recollection is probably what my recollection is. I'll never forget, John and I, we'll go on walks occasionally, and I think it was during a lunch walk. We were talking about eventually going fee only. He's like, Mike and Ken are on board with it. Apparently, we're going to do this now, and we're just thinking, we're like, man, I thought we were going to have to wait 10 years, until they retired, probably before, it was us. And now which is great because we have the extra help and their wisdom. I mean, it's much better to do this when we've got all 4 of us than when they've left and retired. So I remember getting that piece of news. My perspective probably is a little different because I haven't been connected to financial planning since the 80s. John was connected to it from birth, apparently, whereas I discovered it in college. And I kind of fell into it backwards. I think an advisor, that tells you, maybe this is the path you should go, because I kind of described what I thought I'd like to do. I had never heard of financial planning. They said, we've got this program. You probably should look at it. And I felt like I knew very little. So I felt like I was playing catch up as well, trying to, up my knowledge. And I just fell in love with it, but being exposed to it at that point in time in the college setting, I think maybe it was positioned differently to me than probably what John had. John had a practical positioning of it and drawing from his dad and his uncle, Mike and Ken. Whereas to me, it was kind of, all right, commission, somebody else is paying you fee only. It's only the client paying you. I think that's the way I want to go. And you can say you do tax planning, everything just kind of like, this seems less restrictive and seems more, just transparent and clear as to the direction I want to go. So that was kind of the direction as I got exposed, just where the profession was or was heading, going that direction. And then I think it was probably interesting when I joined in 2019 and got to see what the BD world looked like. And, there's unquestionable that our firm, Mason and Associates, was doing the fiduciary thing, doing financial planning, right? Doing everything. But then as a sitting in with clients, I'm just going, John, this is oppressive what you have to go through with FINRA and the fact that there's somebody in between us. Like we have to go through our old BDs. Like, there's too many people in between us and our clients, even though we're doing the right thing, which is the page they were on. But they probably just didn't know what does it look like in the RIA space. And I'm saying, well, there's additional responsibilities we'll have to do based upon what I see us doing right now. We've got no worries. We should do this. And I'll never forget one of my first clients here that we took on as we were going through all the paperwork, which I thought we had to do a lot of paperwork in the RIA space, but little did I know, as we're going through the paperwork, the client looks at me and says, "Do you do this a lot?" Because it's just like, sign here, sign here, sign here. It's just so much paperwork. So, and a great client, great relationship. But to me, that was one of those moments too, where it's like the client is saying, what in the world? Like, why is there so much disclosure?
Well, Tommy, you hit on a few great things there. And if I can just piggyback for a second, Maddie, on those, you have like the educational world, college world of financial planning. Then you have like the practical world of financial planning. And one of the things that I know was really tough for Mike and Ken is because we always wanted to be the hub. We always wanted to be the firm that our clients came to solve every single problem, whether that was a fee-based investment, a commission-based investment, a life insurance policy, a long-term care policy. So I think there were, and I was too, a little bit hung up on, are we just now going to ignore this entire section of the industry? Are we just going to ignore variable annuities? Are we just going to ignore life insurance policies? Are we just going to ignore long-term care because we don't want to get paid on them? And for years, sifting through all of those and understanding the nuances of a John Hancock policy, or the difference between a 90 calendar day elimination versus a 90 service day elimination, we feel like that practical training that we got has enabled us to be even better advisors. So now we're committed as a group of four, although we're not going to be receiving commissions going forward, we're not going to ignore that section of the industry. So I think that was scary, just thinking about not being that central hub, or now having to outsource life insurance or what have you to somebody like Low Load.
I was going to say, and the world has evolved. And so I think that was maybe a little bit of light I was able to shed when I came in, is that, hey, there is Low Load out there. Now we have XY tax services to help potentially fill that prep need. There's another one out there now. There's another insurance one. We now have fee only annuities. So the world has changed as well.
That's such valuable perspective that you're both talking about. And Tommy, I love that you're coming in from the fee only space into a very established BD relationship. And John, would you mind kind of explaining a little bit more about your responsibility to the broker dealer and what kind of sense of business ownership you had before you registered a SEC registered firm?
We are doing essentially the same thing now that we were doing 6 months ago. The biggest difference is we are now 100% and completely independent. So as we think about Mason and Associates, the firm, Tommy and I were talking about this before we jumped on today, is that we still do our radio show. We still specialize with federal employees. We still use Right Capital for our financial planning software. We still use Holistiplan. So life looks almost identical. We're still paying our rent. We're still paying our team members. Like, really no difference from a organizational structure or a client relationship experience. The hardest part, I think, for leaving the BD was the BD is a really big company that has a lot of money. So you think, well, maybe they have better legal support, or you think if something happens, they've got my back, or you think, well, maybe I'll have access to better technology because they have deeper pockets. And what we found is we feel really comfortable with our securities attorney. We feel very comfortable with the professional advisors that we've put in place. We've eliminated quite a bit of cost of being affiliated with a broker dealer. So the previous BD, Maddie, was really hands-off. There were some discounts available, but they didn't come in. They didn't tell us how to run our business. They didn't provide leads. They didn't provide prospective clients. So it was really just like this umbrella that facilitated investments, facilitated a few technologies, had some conferences throughout the year, had some training throughout the year. But as far as Mason and Associates goes, there was never really any direct involvement into like them coaching us or them telling us what we needed to do on a daily basis.
Fascinating.
And it's interesting as I think through that question a little bit, and it kind of got me going down the transition. What that looked like is, one, there's always that fear of the unknown, and that's even me coming from an RIA into this space, and you know what this other world looks like, and you now know what this world looks like, but there's still a fear of how do we get out of this one into the other one. So we all had that fear of the unknown, and we had to do a lot of homework and research to, as John and I were talking, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And we think we got the best. We had a very pleasant experience. And I'm thinking back to the client situations as we let them know what was happening. Clients for the most part, so it sounds like nothing is going to change for me other than I'm still a client of Mason and Associates. And it's like, well, actually, technically you were a client of the BD. Now you're going to be our client. And they're like, well, that's what I thought I was all along. This sounds great. I was really worried y'all were going to sell the firm, or, you guys were going away. So it's everything's staying the same for me. This sounds great. This whole fee only thing sounds like probably where you should be. So we're all on board with it.
Fascinating. So let's talk about the details. What was the transition like? I mean, if we're scared of paperwork, I imagine that was probably a heavy lift.
It was very scary. It was very scary, and we overcame those fears along the way. So XYPN really helped us throughout the transition from the BD transitioning over to an RIA. One of the best things that you guys did for us, Maddie, is you introduced us to our attorney, Chris Stanley. And Chris has been a wonderful partner for us the entire time. And he's been very patient with us. He's been very, very patient with us because we have a lot of baggage. We have 30 years of BD FINRA baggage. And he's like, hey, you need to log this. So we immediately think like we need a piece of paper with logging. And he's like, no, you just need to track it somehow. So he's been very patient. Compliance was the biggest fear as we left the BD. We were worried. We were like, oh my gosh, we have to go find our own E&O policy, or oh my gosh, we need to go find our new cyber policy. Well, you guys facilitated that. You helped us. You gave us the resources. We're a little bit different than some of the other members. So we needed, maybe not the off-the-shelf cyber policy or the off-the-shelf E&O, but the contacts between Stanley and the other ones that y'all provided really were very instrumental and helpful in this process. Then, as we really began to leave, I think we started those conversations, Tommy, probably fall of 2019.
These are the client conversations.
No, so internally, me, you, Mike, and Ken.
Of 19, that's right, because 20 was when we launched. Yep.
Yeah, so fall of 19, Maddie, we were like, we're doing this. And we were pretty committed to launching on April 1 of 2020.
Oh, great month in 2020. Yeah.
Then the pandemic hit. COVID hit. And we were like, well, this is going to put the brakes on things a little bit. Maybe we can circle back to how we really think that COVID allowed this transition to actually be easier for us, because I do think there were some benefits to that and some helpful things developed along the way. So conversation started September of 19. In June, July, August of 2020, it got really serious. It was crunch time. All the manuals were drafted. We had filed the preliminary with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and talking about why it's so valuable to have two different generations, the seniors, the founders. My uncle, Ken, he said, I think we should personally call every single client. Not every single client that is coming, every single client, regardless of the outcome. Wow. So we weren't able to continue to serve every family that we were serving pre-RIA launch. So Mike, Ken, and I had the brunt of this work, and we literally picked up the phone, called every single family, explained what the transition was going to look like, explained if they were being transitioned to a new financial planner, how that would look, how we would support them, how we would facilitate that. And Maddie, that was the single best piece of advice, single best idea, one of the best ideas we had throughout that transition, because one, it smoothed it over. Two, it paved the way for an efficient transition of paperwork. And then, we've been a staple in this community for a long time. And we wanted to make sure that our clients are taken care of, regardless if we were the firm that was going to be able to continue to do that. So really, really proud of how we handled that. And there were some tough days. There were some really hard phone calls, and it was heartbreaking. Most of those people were understanding. Most were really supportive of us, but it was about a year in the making, from beginning to end.
If we could show you the Gantt chart we had as we kind of brainstormed and just thought this is everything we've got to do, and we're trying to check off. I mean, it was a pretty imposing list. And as I think back through some of them, it's amazing because as it happened, as we got the DocuSigns out the door, and that was one of the blessings of COVID. One of the silver linings was everybody got used to virtual, everybody got used to electronic. So that was very efficient, actually, the paperwork. Very few people said, I need to sign in person or do anything along those lines. Everybody was comfortable. So that went extremely fast. I mean, we transitioned the firm in less than a month of what we wanted to have done once we pulled the trigger, which John and I laughed about it, and Mike and Ken, is this all happened after the fact. It's like, wow, what a buildup. And you just think it's going to be this climatic, so much work goes into it. Then it's almost so anticlimactic. It just went so smoothly.
We're done.
Right. Which I guess was a testament to how much preparation went into it. But there was a lot of work with, we had to negotiate with our now sub-advisor, because we had a different relationship with them through our BD leading into this. So we had to negotiate with them. We had to negotiate with our custodian. We had to have conversations with them, with E-Trade, and then eventually, of course, with our BD. So there was a lot of work that went in behind the scenes. And then it's amazing because it looks like almost nothing went on when you actually pull the trigger, but there was a ton of work leading up to it.
We actually thought, Tommy, that at one point, the four of us were going to get in our cars and drive to everybody's house to get these signatures.
I was just thinking about that. Oh, man.
I mean, we were like, oh, my gosh, we're going to be working 7 days a week. We're going to be driving all across the state into North Carolina. And, a testament to us, but also a testament to our clients who have been supporting us since 1987, executed these forms in a timely manner, and within 30 days, transitioning the entire firm was amazing. And again, the support that E-Trade gave us and other folks along the way as we developed these DocuSign templates and the efficient workflows, and to the Mason support team. We have four team members here who imported all of those signed agreements into Laserfiche, added all the metadata, updated the various fields in Wealthbox. And it was just a monumental task that everybody participated in.
Well, and we probably don't want to belabor these points, but that you just said Laserfiche like it's no big deal. As I think about it, that was another thing that led up to this transition, is because we didn't have, we had everything on a server or in paper files. So we needed to get a compliant, that was compliant for the broker dealer, and they probably had their own systems in the home office that they were documenting with. But now we need, that was part of it. We set out to, how do we have our own compliant cloud storage? So we had a whole Laserfiche transition and building that out. So we're gluttons for pain at times. Let's tackle everything we can.
I love this perspective so much, because what I'm really getting from you both is that the firm was with the BD very much for kind of the structural support that it provided versus, we just want to make commissions and sell insurance. It's very much that it was that umbrella that gave you some reassurance that things were kind of buttoned up. You're not the only ones transitioning from a BD or looking to transition or planning to or have successfully done so. What was the conversation with the BD like? I mean, did you sit down at a big mahogany desk and tell them we're done, or what was that like?
It was really, really great.
What? Cool.
It was really, really great. We planned for the worst possible situation, and we couldn't have had anything further from that. We Maddie, were very fortunate at the BD that Mike, Ken, and I were part of like a speaking tour or speaking engagement. So we had these conferences every year where they were advisor driven. What are you doing? What are you doing well? So like one time I did a presentation, keynote address on how to conduct a virtual client meeting. Looking back, I feel like maybe a lot of these advisors should have paid a little more attention to that. But doing these various speaking tours, we were friends with the leadership at the BD. Personal friends, really good business relationship, and personal acquaintances. and friendships. So again, Mike and Ken provide a tremendous amount of value because they're like, we just need to tell them now it's not going to be a bad transition. They are going to support us in this.
Well, and that's where their experience was great in that relationship, but it was also great to have Chris Stanley in our back and in our back pocket, because we talked to him and it was so great to have, and he continues to be such a great resource of just, okay, counsel, here's where we're at. Here's what we're thinking. What do you think? Like, where are the gotchas? What do we need to be worried about? And so he read through our agreements with the BD, and he said, all right, here's where it's at. And he basically concurred that, yes, you should go ahead and tell them. And it's probably going to work out as the way you guys think it is based upon what you told me your relationship is with them. And if it doesn't, here's our backup plan. So I think it was great because Mike and Ken read the situation correctly, but it was reassuring to have the securities attorney kind of coaching us through it.
We had to plan for if we give our notice and they terminate the relationship in 30 days, we had to be ready for that. So that's scary. And luckily, when we gave them the news, their reaction was like, well, you told us you were going to do this 5 years ago. We're surprised it's taken so long. And it was amazing because we were like, wow, well, that's really great. And then one of the most important things they did for us, Maddie, is the clients that we were not able to continue serving transitioned to other advisors that we had close relationships with at the BD.
Interesting.
So the BD really helped us in that transition. The paperwork necessary to move clients to different advisors was very accepting and agreeing to. Like, we have some clients who still have annuities on the books. We have clients who still have insurance policies on the books. And
when you say on the books, not our books.
Not our books, but what we look at in the financial plan. So they still have those annuities that maybe they purchased in 2015 or earlier, and we're serving those. And the broker dealer has agreed that they're not going to cross market these people because they know that they're clients of the RIA. So they're holding those assets. If we need to do service on it, they're there to help with the service work. They were very, very agreeing and very, very helpful, saying, hey, guys, we just want to make this as simple as possible. And we want to make sure all of your clients have an awesome experience throughout the transition.
Wow. Well, my next question is about the client experience. From their perspective, what really does change? And when it came down to discussing this change with them, how many clients did you have to leave or break up with? I think most people are very afraid of those conversations. And I'm wondering what kind of the nitty gritty of it is.
I don't have an exact number for you, Maddie, on how many people we weren't able to continue to serve. Over the course of time, Mike, Ken, and I were guilty of one thing that was really not the best thing to be guilty of, but also a really good thing to be guilty of. And that is we just wanted to help people. So over the course of time, we did overcommit ourselves. We did get into a situation where our passion for helping people do financial planning, maybe sometimes a lack of clear vision on what's the succession plan going to look like? What's the world going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? So we overcommitted. I would say that easily between the three of us, it was 50 families each that we had to have that breakup conversation or that transition conversation with. Maybe a little more, but I would say at least 50 each.
Wow. Fascinating.
From a client experience, 'cause I think that was part of your question too, what has changed from a client experience? And I don't know that a lot has changed because they were already at E-Trade. Their portfolios, while they've been tweaked and we worked with our sub-advisor to, continue to enhance our portfolios, that's all stayed pretty similar. We were already using Right Capital, so their financial plan, their tax plans are already in place. We've enhanced the services, but and I think that's what most of them said as we told them is just kind of like, well, who is your BD anyway? Like, we've never really to them. Like,
who are these people?
We don't understand why their name is on these statements. So I don't think the client experience has changed at all, other than it's gotten simpler, more aligned, and we just continue to enhance the services that we offer to them.
Great. Thank you so much for walking us through that transition. I know that that's a real pain point for a lot of advisors as they consider this transition. A lot more folks would be part of XYPN if they could be part of it with an affiliation to a broker dealer. Let's shift a little bit and talk about present day, given that the transition only happened just last year. You two host a podcast together. I would assume that's not something you would be able to do at the broker dealer. Is that right?
So we don't do a podcast, but we do have a live radio
That's
program.
right.
That's a live radio show that we do on the first and third Tuesday of every month. And it's a local talk radio, AM 790. And it's pretty neat. We've been doing this for, I think 2003 is when Mike and Ken started doing radio advertising. And then it used to be called the Ask the Expert radio show. It still is the Ask the Expert, but we format it as the Mason and Associates Financial Planning Show, which has been tremendously successful for us, Maddie. Probably,
I bet,
50%, upwards of 70 or 80% of our clients have come from some version of radio marketing and radio program, which is mind blowing. When I joined the firm, I'm like, there's no way. This was in 2010. I'm like, there's no way this is going to work. We have to switch. We have to do social media. There's no way.
Right.
And it just kept working. And then Tommy joined and he was like, you guys are doing radio? I'm like, dude, it's great. You'll never believe it. I don't get it. And then now he's a co-host. And after every show, he's like, I can't believe this is still working. Like, it's
that's so great.
And it's so fun. We did do it with the BD.
Okay.
We don't talk about performance, right? So we don't talk about our portfolios. We don't talk about returns. We just talk about concepts. We talk about financial planning. And last night we had 4 call-in, I think, on the radio program. Tommy and Mike hosted the program last night. We had 4 call-ins, which was great, and didn't even get to all the content that y'all had prepared.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how the show changes over time. We've kind of recently been on this kick where it's almost like a podcast where we're just talking to each other and talking about concepts, and has us wanting to do our own podcast because we've got the material and kind of the equipment to do it. But last night, I think with tax time, we're starting to get a lot of tax call-ins and questions about tax planning and just general tax questions. So we very quickly were unable to touch on everything we wanted to last night. But yeah, it was a blast. And one of the initial calls was like, you guys talk about financial planning a lot. All I hear from you is financial plan this, financial plan that. What is financial planning? Like, explain it to me. At the end of the show, we're saying like everything we just talked about is financial planning. We're fielding calls with people, how much can I put into my 401k? Should I do traditional? Should I do Roth? And granted, we can't give advice, but we can give education. And we're talking about backdoor funding of Roth IRAs and the 5-year rules on Roth IRAs. As we're going through all of this, it's like all of this is financial planning.
All of it.
And it's really cool too, Maddie, because inside of this radio program, not only is it a prospecting tool for us, and it's a way for us to get new clients in the door, it's also a way for us to just help the general public. And we get calls frequently. Thank you, Mike. I've been listening to you since 2003. I'm not a client, but I took survivor benefits because of you. Or thank you, I've delayed Social Security because of you. Or thank you, I didn't screw up A, B, C, and D because I've been listening to this program for 20 years. And that's just very heartwarming and really fun. So although our mission is to make sure we just deliver world-class financial planning to our clients, the radio show enables us to help a lot of people in the area. And then finally, it's actually an avenue that we can communicate with our clients as well. So occasionally we'll send out like an email through Constant Contact saying there's a open season for life insurance with the federal government, and we're going to be talking about it on Tuesday. Please tune in. So we kind of use this show for many facets, and
another example of what you just said, not only open season, but because we just went through the pandemic and the market crash, and subsequent very fast rebound. But around that March timeframe, that's when we did send out another constant. Not only were we calling clients to touch base with them, but we said, hey, we're going to talk about what's going on in the market, not returns necessarily, but we're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about financial planning. Please tune in, and we're going to have our sub-advisor here with us. And that was a great radio show. And we talked about rebalancing, tax loss harvesting, Roth conversions, how we take advantage of the situation, and also how your financial plan should have been designed already weather this storm. We shouldn't have been planning on the fringes. We should already, been prepared for this. So, and that was great.
Oh, what fun. I often wish that there was more radio shows about financial planning. I think I would have probably come into this industry a lot earlier had there been some. I'm wondering, you two really have an impressive relationship, and working with dear friends can become dangerous, and that a lot of eggs are in one basket. How do you guys manage this relationship?
As we were thinking about preparing for this, Maddie, we looked at each other and we said we wouldn't have never been here if it wasn't for just implicit trust and 100% confidence in each other. And that's where Tommy said, you can't pick your family, but you can pick your business partners. And I picked you guys. And we were like, well, we picked you too. And so was I ever nervous? Yeah, I was, of course. I had very, very high expectations of Tommy. I knew everything that I thought he was capable of and thought he would add to the firm. And I remember just saying to my wife, Sarah, one night, I said, I really hope Tommy's as good as I think he is, because I think he's awesome. I just really hope that when he gets here that he likes us, that we don't scare him away, and that he's as good as we think he is, because this is going to be an awesome, awesome relationship. In the year and a half, almost 2 years that he's been here, we haven't had one fight. We haven't ruffled any feathers. And there hasn't ever been a time where, at least for me, where I think we've been disappointed or regretted being in this relationship.
Never. And that's as we were thinking about this, that was one comment I made, is you get to choose you can get to choose your business partners, which is what we did. And we kind of feel like we have been dating, so to speak, since 2010, when we did that senior project together and realized we had a lot of synergy and keeping in touch. So this was a conscious decision, and it just feels natural. So to all of John's points, there really hasn't been any contentions. It only feels like synergies. It feels like we build off each other. It's been a great relationship with Mike and Ken. And I think, Mike has made comments from time to time where he's just like, you guys are like brothers. And I think he says it out of a sense of pride to see how well this is working, that we all gel very well together. It seems very natural. And truthfully, this is one of the things that when I talk to my wife about, we think about fear of the unknown and leaving the situation we had to come down this road, it was, how awesome is it going to be to, if this works, to work with a good friend, partners in business for potentially 30 years. And how often does that opportunity come around? So that was part of the weighing of the decision, was that this can be, not many people, a lot of people do have business partners that work and you get along, but I don't know that you really like each other. Whereas we hang out outside of work. We enjoy having our families together. So I guess it could have blown up on us, but so far it seems to be a very powerful combination.
Yeah, what a beautiful combination. There's really those types of friends where, and I have them, I'm lucky enough to work alongside some of them, where a majority of the time I just don't ever disagree with them. Everything they're saying, I just totally agree with, or I'm learning from them, and that level of trust, if you can cultivate that healthy space and do your own work so that you can show up to the relationship strong, like your father and your uncle, you can make it work for a really long time. And what a beautiful way to approach building your own business, to do it with someone that you want to do it with. And I think that that's so much about the flexibility you get as you build your own business.
It is truly awesome. And as I was thinking through this too, we recently had an owners meeting. So I say owners, partners meeting, just where we kind of want to strategically plan for the year. Our plan originally was to do offsite, get out of the business to work on the business, but the pandemic kind of ruined that. So instead we unplugged all the phones and just met here in the office. One of the strengths was Bobby, John's mom, she pointed out to us, was the amount of implicit trust we have with the partners.
Totally.
And I remember telling John, saying, it is such a strength, and it's one I take for granted until she pointed it out. But we completely trust one another, all of us, and not just me and John, but that's with Mike and Ken as well.
Yeah, beautiful. If you can believe it, we are coming up on time, and I want to ask both of you a final question. And let's speak directly to our listeners, because we know we've got some listeners out there who have been sitting in a position similar to the ones that you've been in before, thinking about breaking away, whether they want to break away, keep the firm and keep it and turn it independent, or break away entirely and create the firm of their dreams. Anything from your experience that you haven't talked about already on the podcast today? Any tips of advice, anything that you would change? Tommy, I'll start with you if that's okay.
Actually, I want to let John go because it seems like
Let's do it.
Had a thought there.
Yeah. John, what about you?
I feel like what we do with our clients, Maddie, is, and one of the questions that we talk about all the time, a client comes in and they have this financial planning problem or a financial plan that's maybe not ideal. And we want to try to optimize it to the best of our ability. So one of the questions or like our process as we think about a financial plan is to dream of the best possible outcome and then start asking fact-finding questions that take you down that path, right? So what's the best possible thing that could happen in this situation? And let's see if we can make that happen. And if we can't, then we move to plan B, plan C, plan D. But we start at the best and we ask those questions that lead us to that best possible outcome and then work backwards from there. I would never throw the BD community under the bus. I would never say you should absolutely be a fee only. You should absolutely be an RIA. It was right for us.
Love that.
But if the best possible outcome for you is fee only, if the best possible outcome for you is less onerous paperwork, if the best possible outcome for you is being in a world where you're eliminating some more of those conflicts of interest, then breaking away from a BD can be life-changing. It really has given our team a lot more balance. It's given the client relationship a lot more simplicity because we're not spending 20 minutes every meeting doing paperwork. It's truly been a blessing leaving that world and coming to our new world. Obviously, you have to have some plan, whether it's ready access savings or a good book of business or a good clientele who you're fairly confident is going to come with you. You've got to have a plan. Having resources like XYPN, having resources like Chris Stanley, having other advisors and other friends who have been through this before. We support the community of advisors. And Maddie, if you ever called us and said, hey, we have a firm that's thinking about breaking away and they're scared, would you guys talk to them for 15 or 20 minutes? We would drop everything, maybe not that day, but we would absolutely have that phone call. We would have that conversation and we'd be willing to help. So I guess the biggest piece of advice I have is it is scary, but this world, once you're here, is not as bad as you think it's going to be. If you put those right people in their places, if you have that right support system, it's really not that scary. You're probably overinflating or building this up way too much.
Great advice.
That's it. You said it real well, John. I think if you're thinking about breaking away, the chances are you probably should. And it's just doing an assessment of what do you think you're getting from your BD. And it's not to throw them under the bus, but it's just do an assessment of what you're supposedly getting from them, what you are getting from them. And you'll probably be surprised what resources are out there to replicate that. And then if you're happy in the BD space, my guess is you're probably not thinking about breaking away from it. So it's not really something you need to think about. But if you're thinking about it, chances are it's not as scary. You do need to do a lot of planning, but there's a lot of resources out there to help you. And our firm is certainly happy to, let someone pick our mind for 15 minutes, 30 minutes to share our experience.
Awesome. John and Tommy, you two are so wonderful, so dedicated. I'm envious of the working environment that you've created for yourselves and for your team. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done in this space and for being motivators and inspirations to a lot of our listeners. I guarantee that we've got listeners who have learned a lot today. Any other final words from you two before we sign off?
This was our pleasure. We sincerely enjoy and appreciate that you guys think enough of us to have us on your podcast. And we just really like being members of XYPN, attending our first virtual conference last year that you did a wonderful job, doing, you kind of the MC, right, was your position. Yeah. First thing every morning, getting everybody hyped up for the conference. So we really enjoyed that. And we're just really excited for this year. And stay tuned. Hopefully, more to share from Mason and Associates and constant innovation, but smart. We're not gonna grow too fast and in the wrong direction, but constantly looking for improvements.
No doubt.
Thank you so much. It's our excitement, and we really did enjoy it. And we're getting ideas from the virtual conference. That was very well done. We were very impressed. And perhaps we'll have a chance to share more because I know there was a lot of topics we didn't touch on, like Surge, XY tax,
Totally.
tax planning niche. we got a lot of material. So we've certainly, if we've done a good job, we would certainly welcome the opportunity to do this again.
Absolutely. We could have talked for a number of more hours, but this was such a good interview, folks. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Avocado toast, selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You are not alone and you are not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm, and that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.